Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython Weekly for August 5th, 2019. My name is Scott and I go by TanNewt online. I'm sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython full-time. CircuitPython is a small version of Python for embedded tiny microcontrollers, which are inexpensive computers and all sorts of different devices. So we're bringing ease of use and Python to those platforms, particularly for beginners. This is our weekly meeting that we run every Monday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on our on the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join at the URL adafru.it/discord. Everybody's welcome to join, so hop in there and join the voice channel. If you just want to listen, you can just let us know that you're lurking. If you do not have a microphone or you're in a noisy environment, you can always post your updates via text and I will read those off. And I should also note that everything is recorded. So I'm recording the audio I'm getting over the voice channel and I'm also recording the screen. And that is because we post it on the Adafruit YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Adafruit. It goes up on podcast services as well if you want to follow along but are not able to make the meeting. If you're one of those folks who is typically working during the day when this meeting happens, you're always welcome to hop in the notes doc and drop in information about what you've been working on. And even if you don't make the meeting, we'll read that off on your behalf. That's a good way to participate even if you can't make the meeting time. This meeting is run in 5 parts. We start with community news, which Phil will go over, and that's kind of just highlights of the week. It's an abbreviated version of the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, which goes out on Tuesday mornings, and you can sign up for adafruitdaily.com. After community news, we do State of CircuitPython and the Libraries, which is a statistical view of what's happening around, or how well the project is doing. That should give us kind of a unbiased view of how the project is going. After State of CircuitPython and the Libraries, we have Hug Reports, which is done as a round robin. So what we'll do is I will start, and then we'll go through all the people that are in the voice chat, and I will also read off any notes that people have dropped in. Any notes that people have dropped in the notes doc. I will do those in alphabetical order as well. And if you are lurking and can pull up the notes doc and just make sure that in the notes doc it says you're lurking or text only, that's really helpful for me as I call on people. So Hug Reports done as a round robin, and the general idea is to give everyone a chance to say thank you to folks for the work that they've been doing. It's really good to say thank you to folks and highlight the positivity and the positive things that are happening in our community, both to thank folks and to also just reinforce what we value as a community. After Hug Reports, we do another set of round robin for status updates, which is a more technical view or matter-of-fact view of what you're working on. So a little bit about what you've been working on in the past week and kind of where you plan on going in the coming week. That's a great way to get everybody on the same page and make sure that we can give tips and tricks about the work that somebody else is doing, because we might have background in it. Let's see. In the weeds is the last section, which is a chance for us to have longer form discussions about topics that are concerning to CircuitPython and CircuitPython community in general. So yeah, I think that is the gist of it. As I said, we are recording it, and I will take time codes as well. So along with the recordings, you'll find a link to the notes doc, which people can also, you can hop in there right now and edit it as we go. I'll just drop the link in the text chat again. If you want to follow along. And then this gets copied over and put in a GitHub repo that then all of the recordings link to. So if you don't want to listen to the whole thing, the meeting tends to run about an hour. If you don't want to listen to all that, we'll take time codes so that you can skip through it. So with that, I will take our first time code and hand it off to Phil for community news.
All right. How's it going, Scott?
Good.
All right, so this week will be our biggest newsletter, everyone. I'm putting the draft there. If you want to follow along every single week as we work on the Python on Hardware newsletter, you can. It's on GitHub, and it's also the most, text-friendly if you don't like images and all that stuff, and you like to consume your media through GitHub, like some people do. So that's there, and there's a lot because it is CircuitPython day, week, month. So we're going to be doing things all throughout the month of August. Here is some things that just came in that I'm adding to the newsletter once I get uh, finished with this audio chat. This is from let me make sure I get this right. This is from the folks at the Delhi Technical University for Women, and they have some photos. Some of the swag items that we sent over there arrived, so check that out. They also have this. They took some great photos of some cool. I put this in the chat. Like, look at these. This is the temporary tattoos. Oh, let's see me holding the Halloween. All right, cool. So some of the people are in the chat. Thank you for doing this event.
Awesome.
This is all working out. Okay, so we'll have Scott on our shows this week. So on Wednesday, Ask an Engineer, probably something on Thursday, and depending on how schedules work out and more, we'll have some activities throughout the week. And we'll also have some fun things like a pie roller that we're giving away and a lot of surprises on the show. Next up, Katney's Pie Ohio keynote video is posted. If you haven't seen it, check it out. In other Adafruit news, Sedacious is doing a talk, so I included that in the newsletter as well. That's coming up pretty soon in San Francisco if you want to learn about accelerating driver development with CircuitPython. Scott will probably talk about this later, but CircuitPython 4.10 was released. I think it's just pretty much in name only because
Mm-hmm.
our release canon, it was so solid.
Yay.
Uh, that's a cool release. It's like this is just the official name. And then over the weekend, we didn't know about this, but now we do. There is a CircuitPython for beginners with Adafruit, Circuit, Playground Express, and Mu. It's starting out in Japan, and we're in contact with the author now. And I just really like the cover because this is how I think all covers of programming books should look. Um, so that's in the chat. And then I have one last thing to wrap up for this test. So the new version of iOS allows you to use things like USB drives, and for us, that's good news because we act like USB drives when we're a Python on hardware device. The only thing was the first round of iOS beta would just delete files, and now it doesn't. So now we can use even though the apps aren't aware of the storage, you can move the .py file to internal storage, edit, then send it back. It'll automatically save, restart the device, and just run. I have a couple more tests, but like right now, it looks really good. Noah and Pedro are going to do, I think, a quick guide in the video. So that means anyone who has iOS devices in environments that they use for learning, especially schools, this is just yet another way to interact with CircuitPython on lots of devices. Keith used our guide for getting CircuitPython on SNEC. And so this is
Mm-hmm.
the SNEC board. I just put that in the chat. It's a very small Python-like language. You can check out what he did. And then I think we're going to try to do a quick video of this week. But Adafruit joined the RISC Foundation, and we did this for a few reasons, but mostly because we really think that RISC is going to be an architecture that we're going to see, especially our stuff in the future,
Mm-hmm.
live on. And we're looking for folks out there who know of or would like to um, do some RISC microcontroller work where there's some built-in USB and lots of RAM, because that's kind of our thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then last up, well, not last up, almost last up, there was okay, good. Jepler wants to. All right, that was easy. Done. All right. Circuit Python snakes its way to RISC. It'll be my next headline. I'll put this graphic in there. Next up, there was a tweet about what was the best swag, and a bunch of folks said the Circuit Playground Express that happened at PyCon, as well as some of the Circuit Python powered devices that we worked with Microsoft on for the lunchbox. So that was kind of neat because sometimes we see things like pens or like USB drives or T-shirts. We're like, that's kind of not what we're into. We like giving out hardware when we do stuff, and that worked. That looks like it worked out really well. So thanks everyone. I think some of the folks from the community had chimed in on that. And then last up, because I got to go on to next thing, Hug Reports for All. Thanks for making this a fantastic first Circuit Python day week. if I'm using time, if I'm using time words the right way. This was just this month was just to get us started, so we have time to plan for the next year one. But thank you so much for everyone who did stuff already. We'll have shows, we'll have some community celebrations, we'll have some stuff in the chat, we'll have some giveaways. But I just wanted to say thank you to everyone for coming up with things to do on this very special day, month, week, year of CircuitPython. And back to you, Scott.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep.
That
Bye
actually
bye.
just reminded me that I'm giving a talk at the local Python user group once I'm back next week, so we should advertise that too.
Yeah, you can practice on the shows, and then you could do that. And send me some for the newsletter. I'll add it.
Yeah, I need to look that up. Cool.
Okay, take it
All
away.
right. All right. Thank you, Phil. Sorry, I'm making notes about what Phil said. Okay. Next up, we have state of CircuitPython and its libraries. And unfortunately, the script that takes all the stats has been really unhappy. So we're going to have to take a look at that. It's been 5 days since it's actually run. So I'm not going to go over all the specific stats. But don't worry, when we get it back going, we'll post it here and get info on that. Just in general, as an overview of state of CircuitPython, we really turned the corner in terms of moving from 4.0 to 5.0 development. We got 4.1.0 stable, which is kind of like the best. It's definitely the best version of 4x, and a lot of the work that Dan's been doing is in 5x, so that's been really helpful. So we'll start to see that we're going to get 5x being talked about, and we'll have some alphas. Probably the first one this week is what Dan and I were talking about. And we'll also see all of the frozen module bundle stuff producing a 5x bundle as well, even though it will be backwards compatible with 4x and 3x, because there's no plans to merge in MicroPython into 5x, because we don't want to destabilize it too much, because we do ideally want to have 5x stable within the next couple months. So that the merging from MicroPython will have to wait a bit longer. Anyway, so that's the gist of state of CircuitPython on its libraries. I guess I should also just a blanket thank you to everyone who's done pull requests and reviews, both on the libraries and on the core repos. We're always happy to see new folks come along and do that. So hopefully you know who you are, because we don't have a list this week, but we really appreciate it. Okay, let's move on to Hug Reports. Hug Reports is a chance for us to say a quick thank you to folks who have been doing awesome work within the broader community. It doesn't even have to be with CircuitPython necessarily, although that is definitely the theme of this discussion. So I'm going to start, and then we'll go to CLI Ninja next. And as a reminder, if you don't have a microphone, but still want to post something, let us know you're text only. And if you just want to listen, and let us know that you are lurking. If you are missing the meeting straight completely, you're always welcome to drop things in the notes doc, and we'll read that off as well. Okay, I'll take a time code for myself and get going. Okay, first and foremost, a huge thank you to Kattni for the wonderful keynote for PyOhio. There's a link, and we can post it again. I think Phil just posted it as well, but really take the time. It's like 30-ish minutes. People should watch it. It's a really good overview of how community is key to what CircuitPython is. So highly recommend that. Next Hug Report is thank you to Jeff Epler and Summersoft for working on the audio work. Excited to see that stuff get polished up, so thank you for working on that. Thanks to HexThat for fixing up the audio core imports. One of the changes in 5x is that we split audio I/O apart. So audio out is now in audio I/O, and everything else is in audio core. So HexThat was going through our libraries and changing the imports so that it works in backwards compatible way. So thank you to those folks. Thank you to Matt Land for doing some image load library reviews. Ever since doing the PyCon sprint on image load, he's been a huge help in doing reviews onto that repo. So thank you to him. And then in general, I want to say thank you to the PyOhio and the PyCon Australia folks for including those of us only online with the talk videos. Both of them have started showing up. So thank you to Matt Trentini, who did an hour-long deep dive into how to extend MicroPython with C modules. In general, that applies to CircuitPython as well, so it's still good background. So even if you want to do CircuitPython development, I say take a look at that, and a lot of the things will be similar. Thank you to Nina for her talk on debugging at PyCon AU. It's really interesting to see her workflow because I'm definitely a printf debugger, but I want to see the other way that people do it. So there's a link to that. And then lastly, for those of you who are relatively new to the CircuitPython community, Elizabeth Dunham is a Rust person who has a series of really good talks about how to automate your community and ensure that communities grow in the way that you want. And they were hugely influential on me from kind of the very get-go. So this is her latest one that she gave just at PyCon AU about community, and she talks a lot about the similar points. So I highly recommend watching both this talk and some of her earlier talks about community and how to ensure that community stays welcoming. So props to her for her. I want to meet her at some point because it has been such a huge benefit to us. And the way that we approach CircuitPython's community, and it's worked out. We're 3 years in, it's worked out really well. So yeah, thanks to everyone, and let's go to CLI Ninja. If you have any hug reports.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Hug report to Philip. Thank you very much, Philip, for sending us the boards, which made us enable to celebrate CircuitPython Day, and also helping us organize the event. So we had some amazing fun at the event, and we also had a cake, which I just gonna put here so you can see. Few more people joined the CircuitPython community, and hopefully they will be contributing soon. So thank you much.
Awesome. That looks super cool. Thank you for taking that on. It's exciting to see. They had cake. And welcome to the meeting. Thanks for dropping in. All right, let's go to Brent.
Hello. Can you hear me?
You're a bit quiet.
Oh, I'll fix that in a second. I'll just speak louder. Hug report to Kattni for the keynote. I watched it yesterday, and it was really wonderful. It reinforced the CircuitPython as code plus community portion of this project. One to Stuyven Struvel, or I'm butchering his name, but on GitHub for Python RSA. It's a pure Python RSA implementation, and it works really well, and minimal modification required to get it working with CircuitPython, surprisingly. And another for Kattni for all the resources she put into the Circuit Playground Express documentation, all the learn guides. I taught a class at a hackerspace in Brooklyn on Saturday, and it helped me create curriculum for the class and have something to build off of. And Dan for ongoing work on BLE.
Awesome. Thanks, Brent. And when you're looking at the changes that you have to make to a Python library into CircuitPython, I'm always curious whether those things are things we're okay with or things that we should actually fix too. So it's worth thinking about. Okay, Carter's looking, so we'll go to C. Grover.
Yeah, group hug today for the team and community. There are so many great things happening, and it's inspirational. Special hug to Lady Ada today for a subtle hardware and engineering design decision that she made that popped up as something really useful and innovative for me this week. So thanks to her. She's always surprising me with great engineering. But anyway, and congratulations to Kattni for her inspiring keynote. I had a chance to watch it this morning. She just did a wonderful job.
Awesome. for inspiring keynote. Okay, let's go to Dan.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So thirds to Katney for the keynote. I just want to echo it. It's a really great talk, and I highly, highly recommend you watch the video. Thanks to Scott for doing the 4.10 release, which is great. We have high-speed CircuitPython and a bunch of fixes in there, and it should hold us well for a while. Thanks to Deshipu for making a bunch of changes to stage and thinking about various things. He's also working on buffering, which is helpful too, like pre-allocating buffers, which is under discussion right now. Thanks to Seth Ito for a BLE documentation fix. He was proofreading the stuff that I had checked in already. That's really helpful. And thanks to Jeff Epler for all the PWM and audio work he's been doing now. Okay.
Thanks, Dan. All right, let's go to Dave Bricchetti.
Hello, how do you hear me?
Yeah, sounds good.
Oh, awesome. My first time here. I'm a programmer and a teacher, and I love being able to run Python on. So my hug is a general hug to everybody who's brought that to us.
Great, and thank you for joining. Happy to have you
Yeah.
here.
Thanks.
All right, Dave P is lurking, so we'll go to Deshipu.
Okay, so that's on our list. So Katni for the keynote, it's very inspiring. And for the font, I lifted from it because it's a really nice font for displaying code. Dan Jepler and Tanyu for reviews and improvement suggestions on my pull requests. I really appreciate that. Jepler for the discussion about audio buffers. Thank you for starting that. I didn't notice that there is an opportunity for doing it even better. Somersoft, Jorin, and Lady Ada for the English lessons. And Dan and Jorin for continuing the fight with Bluetooth stuff. So that's it. Thank you.
Awesome, thanks Deshipu. All right, Hakuzatuna is lurking but has some text in here, so I'll read that off. Says, hugs to everyone who's written Python intro guides. I've been able to point a number of people on Discord to them and instead of saying go buy this 1,000-page Let's book to learn Python. So props to folks. And let's go to Jeff Epler.
Hello all. I just have group hugs today, and also I'm blushing for everyone thanking me, hoping to bring that PWM stuff to the finish line soon, but I'll see you in status updates.
Sweet. And thanks for joining us, Jeff. All right. Jerry.
Yeah, I hope to keep my schedule rearranged so I can hang out a little more.
Awesome. That would be great. All right, let's go to Jerry.
Hi, thanks again to Dan for his continued BLE work and his patience with my questions about his stuff, especially stuff that hasn't been released yet. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, Jerry. Okay, I'm going to read off Katney. Katney says, thank you to everyone involved with PyOhio and my keynote. I will do my individual hugs next week when I'm around. All right, let's go to Maker Melissa.
Hello. Okay, so just a hug report to Katney for your excellent keynote. I enjoyed watching it twice.
Awesome. All right. Mike is lurking and Summersoft is lurking with a group hug. So that is that. Thank you to everybody for hug reports, and particular shout out and thank you to the folks who are new to the meeting this week. This next section is status updates, and it's run in the same exact way as the last section, where we do kind of a round robin. And again, I will start. The general idea is that you spend a little bit of time talking about what you've been working on in the last week. That could be core CircuitPython work, that could be library work, that could be what project you're building. It's all game, and we want to hear about it all. So yeah, what you've done in the last week and kind of where you're going in the coming week. And then we may have tips or tricks or comments about the work that you're doing. If it's going to be a long form discussion, the next section in the weeds is the better place for that. So if you have those, drop those in the text CircuitPython text chat if you have in the weeds topics, or put them in the notes doc directly. We'll get to those once we do this round robin. So let's start off. I will start with my status update. I was doing more e-ink tricolor work. I finally kind of got it to the point where it was computing what pixels should be the third color pretty well. So you give it like a highlight color, and then anything that is that highlight color in the bitmaps under the hood will then get the highlight color of the display. Looks pretty neat. So I'm pretty much done there. I have some refactoring and reorganization to do with that work. But the e-ink side, or the e-paper side, is pretty well set. It's available in a repo on my version of CircuitPython, but I'm not going to get it in. I go to New York tomorrow, so that should probably land late next week, because I have reorganization to do, and I also have I'm going to redo the refresh API. So we have refresh soon, and we have wait for frame, and that's going to be replaced with an explicit reset or refresh call, along with a property that you can just check to see if the display will refresh if you call it immediately. That's particularly for e-paper displays where it's about 3 minutes between frames, and you don't want to have to call refresh and then wait for 3 minutes necessarily. So that will come next week. And so I'm in New York starting Tuesday evening. So I will be on a lot of our shows. So you'll see me on Ask an Engineer and Show and Tell this week. And then we'll do a CircuitPython Day stream on Thursday as well. So I'll try to keep up with reviews and stuff like that, but I may not be doing a whole lot of dev work. So we'll see. Then I'm back on Sunday, so I should be in the meeting, and I kind of have a normal work week next week. For the e-paper as well, I pushed the drivers that I created for that. So if you watch the Adafruit repos, there's four new drivers there. They're not all polished up. They're still failing lint, and they're not in the bundle, but I just wanted to back those files up before I travel and may lose track of them. And then I also released 4.1.0, which is exactly what RC1 was, but it now has a stable designation. So yeah, that's it for me, and I'll be in the meeting next week. I think Katney will run it, but I'll be around. But the remainder of the week will be me in New York, so my schedule will be a little bit wonky. Okay, and with that, let's go to CLI Ninja. Do you have any status update? May not. All right, we can get back to you. All right, let's go to Brent.
Hello.
Hello.
My microphone better?
Yes, it's better.
Okay, cool. It's hard to get it corrected around here. Last week I worked on the IoT Monthly that got sent out. I started work on a Google IoT Core library to interface CircuitPython with Google's IoT offering. It required a lot more work than I expected, and I'll talk about that in a bit. I spent my Saturday afternoon teaching CircuitPython at New York City Resistor. It's a really old hackerspace, and they have a lot of cool LED-related projects that distracted me. And I have a lot of ideas on improving curriculum for the next time. The beginners were very beginner, as in they didn't program before. And then some of the people had previous experience, but only with Arduino. So it was interesting to kind of understand people from both perspectives, because I do this every day. So it's interesting to see people who have never done this before work with it.
Right.
I got CircuitPython RSA into a good spot. Hopefully I'm going to release it this week prior to an IoT Core release, because it's a dependency for that. I was porting Pi ASN1, which is a ASN.1 library, over to CircuitPython, and I hit a memory error every single time. And it's a generic memory error, and it's not a very descriptive one.
Huh.
And I'm not sure why it's running out of memory, but I'm going to spend tomorrow maybe looking at that more, or my free time this week looking at it. But it'd be really cool to get it working with CircuitPython, because that would allow us to generate a public and private key on our computer, and then drag the private key over to the CircuitPy drive, and have the RSA library do decoding of keys and do signatures with it. And that would be like a very CircuitPython-y workflow. So I'd like to get that working prior to release, but if it doesn't, it's okay. It's something we could improve on in the future. Hashing, encryption, decryption all work, and I wrote tests. And then the Google IoT core for CircuitPython is coming along. Worked on it this morning, and hopefully by the end of the day today, which is looking more like the beginning of the day tomorrow, we'll authenticate with Google's servers, and that's about it.
Nice. We can take a look at the memory error when I'm in the office too.
Oh, that'd be great.
I'm curious.
So am I.
Awesome. All right. Carter's looking, so let's go to see Grover.
Let's see. Last week was heads down and adding a musical envelope generator to the precision waveform wing. So I used a trick with the M4's AREF pin to generate the ADSR waveforms via the DAC, and it was surprisingly effective, because if you use the DAC for amplitude control, you get a lot of precision out of it, probably more than you need for an envelope. But I was able to successfully do the ADSR stuff. I'll post some pictures of that.
Okay.
What was that?
I just said okay.
Oh, the final version will probably use digital potentiometers instead of the M4 DAC. But at least I was able to prove the concept and do it all with CircuitPython. Implemented a MIDI portamento control for it too, so I can play the Star Trek theme with a pitch-controlled theremin sound. That was kind of an artificial objective I set for myself. The AREF trick can also be used to create a manual volume control for audio I/O playback, by the way. You can control the volume from about 15% to 100%. So as we're waiting for the mixer stuff to come into play, this is a way to get manual control over the volume output without having to go back and adjust the amplitude of the source wave files and such.
Wait, how do you do that?
Let's see. Here's what I did.
I was like, wait, this sounds like an interesting trick.
You take the tray volts and the AREF pin on an M4. You put a control, or you put your control waveform on the AREF pin, play out of the DAC like you normally would play, and you can control the volume. Let's see, that one is here's one with the manual volume control. But you can see there's a limitation on how low you can go with that control voltage on AREF.
Right.
But I was able to get it to go from about 3 volts peak to about a half a volt. So that's 100% to about 15%. So it's a quick way to add volume control to audio I/O if you don't want to spend a lot of time modifying files.
Interesting.
Yeah, I may publish something on that. It was kind of a fun hack.
Yeah, that would be good, because then we can point people to it.
Yeah, the final version, though, I won't be using the AREF. I'll be using some sort of a digital potentiometer, and I'm evaluating a couple of those next week.
Okay.
I've got an Osh Park board coming for the 805245, and I want to play around with that one a little bit because it's not as sensitive to the audio bias voltage on the 3 pins for the potentiometer, and it works really well from about 2.7 volts up to 5.5 volts. You don't have to have a higher voltage for the audio stuff. And then hopefully my string car M0 Express board will come out of hiding, and I'll be able to create a new CircuitPython board def for it. And
perfect.
I'm still anxious to look at Kattni's guide for how to do that, because I'm sure it'll just be easy peasy. And let's see, next week, did I also mention that I have a cheaper than gym membership, but twice as sweaty landscaping project I'm working on? Yeah, that's still happening despite our blazing desert heat that we're having this week.
Yeah. Sorry, I have to get that down. Cheaper than gym and twice as sweaty.
Yeah, cheaper than a gym membership, but twice as sweaty. That's what I tell the neighbors when they look at me slaving out there manually and they say, why don't you just hire this done?
Yeah, I mean, it's been hot here in Seattle, and I'm sure it's hotter over there.
Yeah, we're 103 today, 104 tomorrow, 105.
Whoa. Yeah,
So,
that's too hot.
yeah, it'll cool down after that.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, you, Grover. All right, let's go to Dan.
Okay, so last week I was working on this current time service stuff with BLE, but I had to get pairing working first. So that is now working. And now, as I demonstrated on Show and Tell last Wednesday, you can have CircuitPython ask your iPhone what time it is. So I'm continuing in that vein. I'm starting to work on BLE HID, which uses some of the same code, but it needs also a bunch of new code. HID is kind of complicated and needs something called BLE descriptors, which I had in kind of a skeletal way, but I had to flesh out. So as I wrote in the notes, I fleshed that out. Now, because of pairing, I had to add user-supplied permissions for BLE characteristics and descriptors. And I also cleaned up the API a little bit. There was one case where I was passing a bunch of optional arguments as Booleans, and I ended up making it a bit mass because it was just sort of getting out of hand in terms of the number of arguments. And there's some refactoring that has to go on underneath also so that the descriptor can share code.
Wait, is that Python API that you're using a bitmask?
Yes, but it's in BLEIO.
Okay.
And if somebody is going to write their own service, they need to know how to use it, but you don't need to use it if you're using one of the predefined services.
Right.
So it's sort of at the lower level. So the idea is BLEIO is not supposed to be necessarily as beginner friendly as it might have been otherwise.
Right.
But that's just because BLE is really complicated also.
Have you thought any more about doing the leading underscore on it?
I have thought about it, but I haven't done it. We could discuss that again.
Yeah.
If we wanted to in the weeds. Or maybe next week, maybe we'll do that. Okay. And so what's left to do after I get BLE HID working in some form, then I'll go back and do bonding, which basically means remembering pairing information. So I have to store some of that in Flash somehow and then make it so that I notice it's there. And when I do pairing, I just say, by the way, here's my key.
Right.
As opposed to answering right away. So that's a whole other thing, and I can get BLE HID working without that.
Okay.
I believe. Okay.
Nice. Thanks, Dan.
That is it. Okay.
All right. I'm going to read off CLI Ninja, then we'll go to Dave. So CLI Ninja says, I'm going to try the MQTT library tomorrow and see how it goes with the local and remote broker. Also did some light painting with Circuit Playground last week and looking for a BLE board to work on BLE projects. All right. Let's go to Dave Richetti.
Hello again. I put a picture in the chat of a P5JS kind of physics animation project, and some of my students want to connect that to a Circuit Playground Express that you can hold in your hand and use the accelerometer velocity of these boxes that are flying in the air. In the notes, there's a link where you can run this and see it. So I think it'll be a straightforward matter of just dumping the motor values on the serial connection. And then I think people have done some work connecting that to the P5JS JavaScript framework, which is kind of a reimagining of processing if people haven't heard of it.
Interesting.
Any quick tips on that would be great. Otherwise, I'll do a little research.
Yeah.
I think it's been done before.
Yeah, I can't remember anything explicitly, and I would just say you should post it up and we'll blog it out.
Will do.
Cool. Thanks. All right. Dave P is lurking, so we'll go to Dishipu.
Okay, again, a whole bunch of things. So last week I worked on my stage game library. I mostly cleaned up the MicroPython port of it. So MicroPython now has a way of easily adding third-party C modules to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I have used that to basically package stage for MicroPython. And once I was working on that, I also added scaling so that you can have 2x2 pixels on bigger displays. A lot of MicroPython boards have bigger displays where the games don't look so good because they are tiny. So that scaling helps. And I already had the code for GIF file loading in plain Python, so I added that to stage. So now you can use GIF files instead of BMP files.
Mm-hmm.
However, on the SAMD21, you usually don't have enough memory to store the compression dictionary, so it will error.
Mm-hmm.
At least on bigger images or ones that have more different patterns in them. Anyways, second thing is I was approached by some Polish people organizing a conference in Poland, and I prepared a badge for them. Here's a photo. Yeah, so there is a photo of it, and it's called Noc Informatica, which means basically IT professional night or something like that. And yeah, so that's basically Pew Pew in a different in a different form factor. Same thing as there was on EuroPython. And we are going to make 150 of those. And another thing is a second prototype for so I mentioned last time that I'm working on another version of Pew Pew, this time with a display, and then SAMD51 microcontroller. So I have a working prototype. It only needs that one bodge wire because I forgot a pull-up on the reset pin.
Oops.
Turns out that SAMD21 works without it, SAMD51 doesn't.
Right. Yep.
So, yeah. So one resistor missing in there. And I'm not happy with the button alignment as well, so I will probably, and the buttons are not that nice, so I will probably still experiment with it a little bit. But it mostly works. It's basically something like PyGamer, actually PyBadge, with everything that is not essential removed from it. And it's powered by AA batteries. So no voltage regulator, no accelerometer, no sound. Everything is removed, like basic thing you need just for programming. Hopefully it will be cheap.
Nice.
That's the goal of it.
What kind of screen is it?
That's the ST7735.
Okay. Yeah.
That's exactly the same as on PyBadge or
right.
PyGamer.
Right.
It's also a cheap screen, so that's nice. And finally, the last thing, the Pew Pew standalone is now produced and sold by Maker Fabs, the factory that originally actually produced them for me, but I talked them into selling it in their shop instead of having to go through Tindy and sending it with expensive Swiss postal service and so on.
Right.
So now you can order it directly from China, and it's much cheaper that way. It's really $10 plus shipping. So that's nice. I will post a link in a moment.
Okay.
But I will finish up. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks to Shipu. All right, let's go to Jeff Epler.
Hello. The NRF PWM audio is feature complete.
and it's just waiting for one last round of Scott telling me the little things I've overlooked, I hope. Although I'd love to hear from anybody else who has tried it, whether you got a sound out, whether your CircuitPython, whatever it was, just crashed. Let me know. Let me know on chat or on the issue, which is number 2000. The other thing I looked into this week is link time optimization for the NRF ports. A number of people, including me and Dan, have looked at this over time, and each time it hasn't worked. This time I tried it, it worked. It increases Pystone speed by 14%, but on the other hand, it increases the build time. You also get back about 60 kilobytes of flash, but none of the NRF boards seem flash constrained at the moment, so that is less important. The main trade-off would be speed versus build time, and I can't make the call on that. Also, it would be good to test it on more boards, but I think they are pretty uniform in terms of link scripts, and all of the UF2 files were a plausible size, not 0 bytes.
Right.
And then the third thing was I sent that photo earlier. I'm resetting my workspace at home because it just got a little bit out of hand. And with working more on CircuitPython, I needed a dedicated computer in that spot rather than bringing a laptop and trying to balance it in a corner. So hopefully that will stay a usable space, not get messy like it has every other time in my life.
My desk is really messy, so I definitely don't work like that.
And yes, you spotted one of my most treasured possessions, that keyboard. It's an oldie, but it will outlive me. I'm confident of it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I need to fix my up arrow on my Model M. I'm pretty sure Lamore uses a Model M as well. I think she does. Anyway, thanks, Jeff. All right, let's go to Jerry.
Hello. Yes, not nearly enough CircuitPython time this week, but mostly a Raspberry Pi week. Still doing Buster updates. I've got a bunch of different little camera projects, and a bunch of LoRa projects that use CircuitPython to use Raspberry Pis. And for those, I'm getting really good and fast at installing Blinka. I can build a new Buster board with Blinka on it in a matter of minutes now. So and Blinka's been working really well on the Raspberry Pis, even the 4s. And I did finally get a little time today to start poking at the BLE stuff, and you know, and again, I really appreciate Dan's help with the pre-release information to try things, and and answering my questions when things don't work quite as I expected. And it's I hope I'm not pushing too hard, pushing on things that shouldn't be worried about because they're not even released. But it's been great fun, and the time code, the service has been fun to play with. Now I just need to learn how all this really works under the hood, and having fun with that. And I do hope to have more time this week. Sounds like a broken record, but that's the plan.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jerry. And I'm excited to poke at BLE like you have been too. Okay, J-Trip is lurking, and I'm going to read Katney off, who's not able to make the meeting. Katney said, Pi Ohio keynote, more next week. Short vacation, Pi Ruler guide, and next up is display guides. All right, Maker Melissa.
Hello. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to give a belated hug report that I just had thought of to you, Tammy, for when you do your code reviews, how you actually look for ways to improve it instead of just approving it.
Sometimes I just approve it.
Well, I mean, I was thinking like the triangle code that I was working on, which is the first item of my status report, is that I wrote a triangle display shape in order to get more familiar with display I/O. Then I wrote a updated display I/O demo that I'm adding to a bunch of the boards. Let's see, I worked on updating a lot of the display guides with display I/O specific setup steps, and I updated some Arduino image reader examples, a bunch of them. And this week I'm gonna continue updating display guides.
All right. Thank you, Melissa.
Yeah.
Okay, Mike is lurking and Summersoft is lurking / text only. So I will read off Summersoft's notes. I just thought of it in the weeds topic, so let me add that. Okay, so Summersoft says, last week for Rosie Pi got Ubuntu Server 1904 working. It's ARM GCC is version 7.2018 Q2. So firmware building will match current. New Ansible headaches with new OS/packages. For Mixer Voice, working on M4 again, discovered DNAM didn't get M0 functions finished. M0 doesn't have the thumb ASM instructions used on M4. This week, get the M0 functions working, and for Adabot, look into increasing occurrences of requests /URL3 lib timeouts, which is the reason we weren't able to read the stats. So I will circle back with that as well. I'll do a belated hug report for Devo, who's in our chat, being super excited that they fixed an SD card issue. So hugs to Devo for taking on SD card issues. It's a deep hole, but sounds like it was successful. So good job there. Jeff Epler paraphrases someone at Pi Ohio by saying, "I'm giving you these review notes because I have a lot of confidence in you and want you to grow as a developer," which is totally the mental model for code reviews. Okay, and that is status updates. Let's go to our final section of the day, called In the Weeds, and this is where we take a chance to talk about longer form topics. So we're gonna start with Dan, and if you before Dan starts, if you have any other topics, please drop them in the notes doc or mention them in the text channel, CircuitPython text channel. We'll snag them and call on you in order. Okay, go ahead, Dan.
Okay. Hi. All right. So the first is just a question. I can't remember if we gave up on Korean and other ideographic languages because there's something missing from Unicode support in CircuitPython, or was it because we didn't have a font for it?
I think the Korean PR that was outstanding is like, I just didn't understand that it wasn't like thousands of characters like Chinese is. So if we had a font and set it up to use it, I think it would work.
Yeah. Korean is syllabic, so I think we could probably find a font.
Okay, yeah.
For it, yeah.
Deshipu says it's about 90. So yeah, it would be awesome if we could get that in.
Yeah, that would be very interesting.
And Deshipu also has experience with using a custom font. That was at a board level, but my intention was that you could do a custom font on a language level as well.
Yeah, actually, if you use FontForge, you can have any glyphs in there. So you can draw.
Right. It's okay if the source font has more characters as well, because the code that bakes it into CircuitPython will only do the ones that are referenced.
Okay, let me take a note here.
So this isn't about when you see it on the connection over USB. This is about if you're on a display.
Right.
Well, it's kind of both, right? Like we currently can't separate out the like needing a font per language and what language the build is, I think. So it's like if we have Korean, we need to support the display stuff, whereas we could potentially, like for Chinese, for example, we could add Chinese support to the strings, but not turn on like all of the terminal IO stuff. Is another option, but I don't think there's a knob for that right now. Right now, the translation has to have all of the characters for the font. Otherwise, I think the build will not work because I think I have it set up.
Okay, because I had looked at that pull request and the pull request fails to build just because there's a misplaced double quote mark And I don't know what happens when you fix that, because I didn't go so far as to test it.
Mm.
But I noticed that was the real reason the build had stopped. It's just a typo in the .po file.
Oh, yeah. Huh. Yeah, maybe I don't break the build if it's missing characters, but it would definitely be a better experience if we had the font, the appropriate font. But it should,
Okay, so
it should work over serial regardless of whether the font's there.
all right, all right. Took a few notes here, and then the other question I had is, so since the Travis builds are getting really long.
Yep.
From like half an hour to like over an hour sometimes now for some things.
Right.
And so the question is, we have 10 concurrent jobs. We don't want to take all 10 because that'll annoy everybody else, the library maintainers and the rest of Adafruit.
Mm-hmm.
So, but perhaps we should consider increasing from 5 to say 7 or 8
Mm-hmm.
or something like that. And in the course of that, we might clean up those lists a little bit, try to balance them a little bit better, and maybe separate out the third-party lists, not necessarily to make them lesser, but just to make it easier to tell somebody where to add a new board.
Right.
So this is partly. Do you see anything wrong with like doing that and going up to say 7 or 8? It'll only increase, it'll improve things by like 20, 25% or something like that. So
yeah, I mean, I'm kind of wondering whether, like, we do a make clean for every build. I wonder how much time we would save if we were actually smart to like say like all these three boards have most in common. I don't know, because we use the command line defines to do different things, and like that basically means you need to clean, I think.
yeah, each board there aren't that many boards that have exactly the same set of compile options.
Right.
And there's a lot of if pound ifing in there.
Right.
So
I would also be tempted to go the opposite way and like just break all the boards up again and just pay the overhead of cloning to have lots of little jobs.
You mean have just do one board and all its translations per job?
Right.
Because
then at least like all of the library builds can get slotted within those small sub jobs.
But we could do 10 at a time, right? I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's an interesting idea too.
Yeah,
okay.
Like it's definitely it will probably be slower, but it means that we don't block things then. The other thing I was thinking about looking into is whether we could find a different CI service that would allow us to like just upgrade the machines we're running on so that we have more threads. Which also reminds me, I saw an article about how GCC 10 is going to have a parallelized link step for LTO, which it doesn't have now. Which should hopefully speed up our LTO stuff a lot, hopefully.
Right. And right now, as we discovered, maybe Jeff rediscovered this too, that GCC 8 is actually 3 times slower.
Yeah.
And not even because of LTO, just in general. And we should probably do some experiments to see whether that's GCC 8 or the ARM build 8, which other people have complained about this, but there hasn't been any answer from anybody yet. So
yeah, I think it's worth. I think it is worth putting some time in here into making sure that the builds work and they're robust and they don't run super slow. So
yeah.
And we're just gonna keep scaling up in terms of build artifacts and stuff too. So we just need to figure it out. Like once we add Korean, we're gonna get 70 extra builds or something.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's worth spending some time on.
Another thing about the length of the individual builds is if I had a travesci.org set up for my own work, and when any individual build goes about 50 minutes, it kills it. So I can no longer pre-test before I make a pull request using travisci.org.
Hmm.
Maybe that's not important because I should just test more locally and then rely on the pull request for getting the real green. But I kind of like that as a safety net
Right.
at the moment because of exceeding that 50 minutes
Is that
on
is
the
that
free
a
account.
is that a build limit or is that a job limit? Like
It
this.
seems to be that as soon as a job hits 50 minutes,
Okay.
it kills that job. So I think that splitting it to 10 pieces, each of which took around 25 minutes, would travisci.org free accounts. But again, I understand if that's not an important goal for the Travis CI integration that you've got.
Well, I think it's good. And then another similar thing that I was thinking of that would be nice with the Azure pipeline stuff got me thinking about was the fact that it would be really nice if pull request artifacts could be placed somewhere. So
Yes.
that when somebody does a PR, we can actually download binaries to test without having to build them ourselves. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's something that we should all be thinking about. We should come up with a better way to do this because it's just going to get worse and worse as we add more boards and translations.
Yeah, and it doesn't. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like we can not never build everything. We have to do that to test all the boards.
Right.
So
yeah, and like
unfortunately.
we're running into upload limits with the GitHub API as well. So
yeah,
yeah.
I mean, we could consider not using GitHub to store release too, and just
Yep.
I don't know. Yeah. All right. All right. So this is a big topic. I mean, you might want to just do a simple thing right now, just to increase it to 6 or 7 jobs, just to make things a little better, and then work on the more complicated stuff. Or maybe the one board plus languages per job might be good.
Right.
Too. Good try that.
Yeah. I've been watching a Azure Pipelines thing about caching, because that's the thing is like the startup cost of cloning is potentially pretty high. And then like there's clone depth stuff that impacts it too. So, yeah, it's worth looking at for sure.
All right. Okay. So those are my two things.
All right.
Okay.
Let's kick it over to Jeff.
All right. So I've just been doing the audio on NRF, but also I noticed this PR about sending in a pre-allocated buffer for the WAV file objects.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there's a different and better way to deal with memory allocation, but it ends up a little complicated. There are audio sources like raw sample where you can't destroy the buffer.
Right.
There are ones like WaveFile and Sampler where you can destroy the buffer. So potentially you could reformat your audio in place so that you don't need another memory allocation within the audio out object.
Right.
The problem with NRF is sometimes that buffer that you need for the audio out DMA can be bigger because every sample is 32 bits no matter what. So if you have an 8-bit mono sample in, you need 4 times the storage. So you can't reuse the area allocated by WaveFile. So what is the way to reduce the allocation to the minimum and have the audio out object and the sample object cooperate better is the general idea. Because I'm pretty sure you can save at least half a kilobyte of RAM if you get this right.
Right. Yeah, so some like pre-negotiation about like what the shared buffer's properties are going to be.
Yeah, and I mean, I kind of think you want to work backwards from the audio out. Tell the audio out, I want to buffer this many samples at once or this many milliseconds at once, maybe. And then it gets snobs to tell WaveFile, here's a buffer you can read into with your data. And then I will turn it into the final form that has to go out to the DAX or the PWM or the I2S. But that's kind of an inversion of how it is now. And so that would turn out to be a big topic. But I don't want this work to go into polishing the pre-allocated buffers for WAV files if we're going to go this other way in the medium term and then create another breaking change and all that stuff.
Right.
but I don't have any answers. So anybody?
I don't think
Deshapu, I think you had some opinions about that.
No, not really.
Yeah, I don't know if any of us have answers, but I would encourage you to not be afraid of having to break it again. Like I'm fine with us breaking APIs as long as we think we're getting closer to where we want them. Like
We pretty much control all the libraries at the moment, at least.
Right.
So if we break anything, we can fix all of them.
Yeah, I think breaking's okay as long as we justify it and we explain how to be backwards compatible and document it well.
All right. Thanks for that. I will write a little note in the.
All right. And I have the last one on here. It's going to be quick. Just Melissa was talking about the triangle stuff, and we have display.io.shape, which was meant to be a more memory efficient way of storing a shape that was potentially symmetric along one or both X and Y axes. But as far as I know, nothing uses it. All the shape stuff right now uses bitmap directly. And that's potentially a better solution because it can store multiple colors, so you can do outlines and things. Should we just remove shape with 5.0? And like, if we need to be more efficient later, we can. Crickets.
It's a good question. The triangle one that I implemented, you can do non-symmetrical triangle with that as well.
Right. So with the way that shape kind of works now is that you have the option of telling it whether it's symmetrical or not. But it's a 1-bit sort of thing, so you wouldn't be able to do outline. You'd have to do outline as a second shape. And then basically it's run length encoding every line. So it just has a start and end per row. It doesn't have the inner bits.
Okay.
So like every row, it just has a start and end. And it's a weird API right now, but potentially we could have it do subscript access and just like if you're setting bits that are right next to each other, you're okay. But the moment you like try to separate bits, then you would get an error. But it potentially, like if you had a giant circle, right? Like you would save a lot by just having 2, 8 uint16s per row rather than 1 uint16 or whatever per location.
It would especially work well for like menus and all that stuff where you have rounded rectangles and things like that.
Yeah, that was its intent, but like nobody is using it as far as I know. So I think
well, we don't have much API stuff yet, right?
I think we should leave it because I think it could be used in the future.
Okay.
Well, we can always put it back, right?
Yes.
It's not like it's
That's
gone.
always my point. I do think it should be switched. So like if it could be used as a drop-in replacement for bitmap. So like if the bitmap you're setting has this property of like all pixels in a row are consecutive, like you should be able to just drop it in and that would be super cool. Or you could even be more crazy and just like, even if your accesses are not consecutive, you could just act like they were. Which means you not necessarily get the same bitmap that you write in out, but it would still save you and not complain if you're like doing an intermediate set. But I don't know. Melissa, I think if you could take a look at that and just like give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I had. It's one of the libraries I haven't really taken a look at before, and I was actually starting to do the triangle thing because I was trying to come up with some demos, and I was diving a little deeper into the display.io to see what things it could do. So
right, yeah. So
that's another thing I could look at.
Yeah, like the shapes library really was like it's Like the display.io dot shape was meant to be like an easy way to store different shapes. So like if you have a circle, you only have to do a quarter of the circle, and then it will mirror it for you, for example. That sort of thing. But it might have been like a premature optimization as well, because everybody's just using bitmap, which is fine. But it's like shape will be quicker too, because instead of having to do bit packing and unpacking, like all it has to do is do a bounds check, like like it just has to seek into the array and then do a bounds check, and then it knows whether the pixel's a 1 or a 0.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd be curious if anybody wanted to compare the benefits of both of those. Okay, we'll leave it for now. And let's wrap up because we're an hour and 10 minutes in. So this has been the CircuitPython weekly meeting for August 5th, if I remember the date right. This meeting happens every week at Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Adafruit Discord server. You can join that Discord server with the URL adafru.it/discord. Everybody's welcome to join the meeting, and thanks to those folks who have dropped in for the first time today. Happy to have you here and hope to see you next week. This meeting was recorded, both the audio and the text chat, so that will go up on the Adafruit YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Adafruit. And it's also on a number of podcast services as an audio-only file. Along with those recordings, we'll have a link to the notes doc, so that has time codes, so you can skip around to the discussion that you may want to revisit or rehear, or you're just listening to this the first time and you don't want to go through the whole thing. Yeah, and the link goes into the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, which you can sign up at adafruitdaily.com. And I think that's it. Next week should be a normal week, so we'll see you all then. And thanks all to everyone who attended.